Maryland lands a big-time commitment in the 2025 class.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, video content creator for 247 Sports and InsideMarylandSports.com, and host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Mike Locksley and the Maryland staff land a huge commitment in the first commitment in the 2025 class for the Maryland Terrapins in four-star Jett White. He's the 2025, like I said, and it's the first commitment in the 2025 class, which is a big deal for the Maryland Terrapins. The announcement was made at the Adidas All-American game in Texas, and it was a complete surprise. This guy was not on my radar at all. You usually have an idea of the type of guys that are going to commit just because of how good of a job 247 and Rivals and On3 do with their projections. It seems like when a recruit is going to commit, you have a pretty good idea if they're coming to Maryland or if you're in the mix for that type of player. But to be honest, I'll be completely honest, I did not know that we were in the mix for this player. I didn't know that we were one of his top schools, and I had no idea that we were going to land him. This kid isn't from the DMV, so it's not like one of those guys that are around here and it kind of makes sense. He's actually from Florida, goes to school in Florida. So it was a little bit of a surprise that we landed this kid, Jett White, but a great surprise for sure for him to make his announcement at the All-American game. But he is a four-star cornerback and has all the tools that you want at the cornerback position. He is 6'2", which you love for him to be at a corner. Usually these guys are about 5'10", 5'11", because when you get to 6'2", you usually don't have enough of the twitchiness overall to be able to play corner in the college football or in the NFL. But it's not like this kid is 6'2" and doesn't have that type of explosiveness and that twitchiness and that quickness that you want from the corner position. He has all that type of stuff. Turn on his film. He definitely still needs to add some weight. 247 had him listed at about 165 pounds, but I think he's a little bit heavier than that. He's probably closer to 170, I'd say, but at 6'2", you probably want him about at 180 overall, maybe 185. Put some weight definitely on him at 6'2", but he's a lanky guy. He's got ball skills. He's got everything you want from that cornerback position. There's definitely a reason he's rated this high. 247 Composite has him as the 275th nationally ranked player, and On3 has him ranked as the 291st ranked player. So he is in that about top 300 range, which is exactly where I think the Terrapins need to hunt for these type of players. You get these type of guys. Top 300 recruits are the guys you want to get. These four-star recruits, those are the guys that are going to elevate your class. When you bring in like 7, 8, 4 stars, that's when you start to enter in the top 25 classes, and that's not easy to do. I'm not even asking for us to get like a 5-star or anything. I just want to get a couple more 4 stars. I feel like we've been getting like 3 or 4 stars depending on the class, maybe 3. Like it just depends, but I want to get closer to 6, 7, 8, 4 stars, especially the ones in the area. But landing one outside of the DMV area is also a really big deal because, of course, you want to recruit guys in the DMV, and that's going to be a big part of our recruiting class. If you look at our recruiting class in the 2024 class, that's what it was mostly made of. It was made of a lot of DMV guys. But you look, we got Brandon Jacobs. He wasn't from the DMV. He's a 4-star safety, top 300 players. So sometime when you want to get some of the top guys, you have to go outside of Maryland, outside of the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, And that's what the top programs do. And once Maryland builds that type of program where not only can we recruit in the DMV, we're still working on getting the top guys in the DMV, but you want to still be able to get the top guys outside the DMV as well. And so once Maryland kind of builds that type of program where we can get those type of guys, which I do think our program is going in the right direction overall, I think we're headed towards something really special. I loved our 2024 class. I think we're doing a lot of the right things in the Big Ten. We'll see how it goes with the conference realignment, but getting a guy like this and Jett White is a really big deal for us overall, just because of the level of play that he has and the offers that he has. Like I'm talking about, he had offers from like Auburn, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State. Everybody wanted this kid. So it's not like it was just us. It's not like it was like okay offers where he's still a good player, but maybe he's not that caliber type of player where he can go on and be a really high level player and potentially be an NFL type of player. We get that type of player from Jett White where he has every offer, which is a pretty big deal because we don't usually get those type of guys. We don't. And for him to be our first commitment in the 2025 class at that caliber of player is a big deal for Coach Locksley to start the 2025 class off right away. The interesting thing is Maryland and Penn State apparently were neck to neck. And we know we have lost some recruiting battles over the years to Penn State. They love to come into the DMV being right outside of it, right outside of Maryland. Penn State is. They love to come into the DMV and pluck from our players and pluck from the DMV area. And we've had trouble defending them off because it's Penn State. They're one of those programs that are able to get those top guys. They usually have a top 10, 15-ish recruiting class. They're usually ranked in the top 10. They're going to become consistent playoff members now with the change in the playoff. Now that it's 12-team playoff instead of a 4-team playoff, they're going to be consistently in the playoffs. So it's hard to beat out Penn State. They love to come and get our guys, but it's nice to finally beat out Penn State for a guy like Jett White overall. And he said the big reason between Penn State and Maryland, he felt more needed at Maryland, which makes sense. Penn State, they just get higher caliber players right now. That's just the way it is. And so if you want to play earlier, if you want to play right away, Maryland's kind of the way to go, I think, when it comes to that. I think that's kind of what he was trying to say overall. But I will say one thing we are doing at a really high level right now is recruiting cornerbacks. We're recruiting cornerbacks at the secondary overall, not just cornerbacks. The secondary overall, we're recruiting at a very high level. 2 4-stars in the 2024 class, and Brandon Jacobs, which I talked about, and Braden Lee, of course, who we flipped from South Carolina. So we are building a really, really high level secondary between the 2024 class, and we'll see how the 2025 class ends up if we can keep this kid. But this kid was originally committed to USC, but did decommit. So he had been committed to USC, which is kind of interesting. And that brings me to my next point, which are we going to be able to keep this kid? I love his name. Jett White Jett is definitely a cool name to have as a cornerback. But are we going to be able to keep this kid? Because when you talk about a guy like this commit this early for a 2025, which is like relatively, definitely pretty early, you start to ask, everyone else still has a chance, whether it's Auburn, whether it's Alabama, whoever it is, they still are going to have a chance to shout out this guy, shout out on his phone and text him and call him and say, are you sure about Maryland? Like, we want to take you on an official. I'm sure he'll probably visit other places. That's just how present day college football works. And these guys commit, but change their commitment a lot. And when a guy like this commits to Maryland that early, it's like, are we going to be able to keep him? He did say a big part of his committing to Maryland was about Coach Baker, our DB coach. So it'll be interesting because some people think Coach Baker could be gone after this year. Are we going to be able to keep him here at Maryland? Because if we're not, I don't know if we hang on to this kid Jett White. I don't know if he stays with the Maryland commitment. He could go and commit somewhere else. I'm not sure exactly how it goes, but I'm not sure we're able to hold on to him. But overall, I'm excited to see what this guy does and how this affects the rest of the 2025 class. I hope he stays committed, but it's honestly a perfect start to the Maryland 2025 class to add one of those blue chipper type of prospects, the perfect type of player that we want to go after. Amazing ball skills, 6'2" cornerback. He has traits to be an elite type of player, top 350 player in the class. I can't wait to see what he does if he sticks with Maryland overall, which I think he will. Let's talk about another player that released his top 6 a couple days ago, and Maryland made the cut. Do the Terps have a chance at landing a really high-level prospect that might be the number 1 player on their board for the 2025 class? I'll tell you about that after this ad from FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is easy to use. There are so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Maryland has a huge opportunity to land Malik Washington, another big-time recruit in the 2025 class, and Coach Loxley has a chance to get back-to-back big-time players. This kid, Malik Washington, who the Terps could potentially land in the 2025 class. I keep wanting to say the 2024 class just because I'm so used to saying it because we just finished with them and it seemed like that's all we were talking about. And I can't believe we're talking about 2 straight players in the 2025 class, but it looks like Maryland's doing a great job early on with this recruiting the 2025 class. But Malik Washington, really good player. Let me get into this guy because I'm sure most of you guys aren't really familiar with him overall, but he could be a huge get. I think he's the number 1 player on our board for the 2025 class because number 1, he's a quarterback, and anytime he's a quarterback in these type of recruiting classes, he's going to be probably your top priority overall, and he's a high caliber quarterback, 4-star quarterback. Attends Spalding, about 40 minutes from the University of Maryland. But his top 6 included Maryland, of course, Oregon, Penn State, Syracuse, Texas A&M, Virginia Tech. Had a big-time offer list with a bunch more offers, but ranked as a 4-star, and on 247 Composite has him ranked 246 nationally, and On 3 has him ranked as a 243rd ranked player in the class. So another top 300 type of guy, but a really big time commitment overall. This kid is an elite type of player. I have seen him play in person. I have seen him play multiple times in person, and he's a really good quarterback overall. He can do multiple things. He has a big arm. He's a lot of arm talent, can make a bunch of throws, can throw the deep ball, and also can use his legs as a dual threat. But he's not a guy that in like high school, he's just running around a bunch. Like he's legitimately sitting in the pocket and making throw after throw after throw. Most high school teams, when I watch them, it's just not like that consistent with their quarterback play. Obviously, it's not going to be like great quarterback play, but for him, I just saw like a huge step up for most of the high school quarterbacks that I have seen. Just from his ability for Spalding, the high school he went to, they just felt like they didn't have to try and like run the ball a ton or take pressure off of him. They'll just throw the ball over and over and over again. And Malik Washington was good enough to win the games. He would shred some defenses up. He did a really good job at reading defenses and not even just making like one read throws, like getting from 1 to 2 in his progression. Really solid player. And then when he needed to, he used his legs. He wasn't like a type of guy that just like used his legs every play and just got outside the pocket, even when the offensive line wasn't breaking down. But when he needed to, he used his legs. So his game seems beyond his years, and he seems to be a really solid player. Seems like a smart player. Seems like a consistent player for the Maryland Terrapins overall, and like he can do some big things for them. And then I really do think we have a good chance at Washington for a couple of reasons. Number 1, I think what we did with Talia, I think we're much more appealing now as a program in terms of getting quarterbacks. We don't have the best track record with getting like top quarterback commits or like getting or putting really solid quarterback play out there. But now that we just put together a really solid 4 years of Taulia Tagovailoa, I think we put ourselves in a much better position to land these 4-star type of quarterbacks like Malik Washington, the guys that we need to keep home, that are really elite quarterbacks, that have big-time offers, that are going to be probably big-time players in college football. Nothing's guaranteed, but you would think this guy, if you watch him, is going to be a really good player in college football. I think how well Taulia played with us, I think it's just so much more appealing. He's the Big Ten all-time passing leader, and that's a recruiting pitch we can use now. He has all the Maryland records, and that's in the current system that we're using now. That's under Coach Gaddis. That's what Coach Loxley has built on the offensive system. That's the same system that Malik Washington would probably come into and play in unless something extreme happened with Coach Loxley leaving or something like that. That's a system that Malik Washington would come in, and he saw Taulia torch it up and saw how much we love to pass the ball in the Big Ten and all that type of stuff. And he probably thought Maryland does a good job of putting players on the outside. Maybe we don't have the best offensive line play ever, but overall, it seems like a good place for a quarterback to go play, a chance to put yourself really on the map, maybe to play early at Maryland while also playing at an elite level, while also playing in the Big Ten, which is going to be one of the 2 best conferences along with the SEC, especially with the conference realignment overall. And so having those great seasons from Taulia and watching Taulia put together the best Maryland quarterback resume that anyone has and breaking all those records under Coach Loxley's system makes it so much more appealing, I think, for Malik Washington to come to the Terps. I think that's partially why we landed MJ Morris. MJ Morris was coming off of seeing what Taulia did. Maybe it's not like we're not getting to like 11 win seasons or anything like that. Maybe we're not a consistent top 25 team, which I think we can get to. But overall, I think you just see how well the quarterback is playing, and you also have a chance to compete right away. I think this is what MJ Morris saw. And I think that's a similar thing that Malik Washington is going to see, and that's a big reason why I think we have a really good chance of landing Malik Washington overall, that proven track record. Look at what Ohio State does. They have guys commit. They always seem to get like 2 5-star wide receivers in whatever class it is. Like this 2024 class, they had the number 1 player on some recruiting websites, and Jeremiah Smith, who's like a 5-star freak, number 1 wide receiver in the class, 5-star, best player in the 2024 class. And they keep getting those 5-star type guys, and they keep turning them out because they have that track record of players playing at an elite level and going into the NFL and doing big things. You think about, of course, Marvin Harrison, who hasn't gone to the NFL, but you expect him to do big things, and all the other players in the NFL, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin, and more. They have a bunch of guys that they put in the NFL that played elite at Ohio State and played elite in the NFL, and that's how you get guys to continue to commit at a certain position. I think we're starting to see that with the Maryland corners. And the Maryland secondary overall. We flipped Braden Lee. We got Brandon Jacobs, 2 4-stars, really high level players. We just got this kid, Jett White, who came in who's a 4-star. I think they saw what Tarheeb Still was this year for us and what Jaquan Shepard, both of those guys are going to the NFL. And then, of course, before that, Deonte Banks was a 1st-round pick and Jacorian Bennett was a 4th-round pick. I think they saw that overall, or I think Malik Washington is going to be able to see that now with our quarterback position, which is, of course, the most important position in all of sports, really, in the hardest position to play. So that's a big reason why I think Malik Washington is going to feel better about coming to Maryland. And overall, that's a pitch that I think he's going to like, seeing how Taulia played, but also a chance for him to stay home is my number 2 reason why I think we have a good chance at landing him. But this guy is number 1, I think, on our 2025 class board, because as a 2025, we got to get it. You got to keep the future coming, and you want good quarterback play. That's how we have had winning seasons with Taulia and how we turn this program around. So overall, I think we have a pretty solid shot at Malik Washington, and I hope we land him. It'll probably be a while till he makes his decision, but I think it was a big enough deal for me to talk about with him releasing his top 6. Some players I won't talk about when they release their top 6, but this guy's number 1 on our board overall, and I think we really want this kid, so I had to talk about him overall. And then last thing, he's a 2-sport athlete, really big-time basketball player. I've seen him play basketball in person too. He's kind of a freak. It's kind of crazy. He's like 6'4", perfect size for a quarterback position. He needs to fill out a little bit overall, get a little bit stronger to play in the Big Ten. But when you see him on the basketball court, he's like 6'4", playing center for his high school, and he's out jumping everyone. Like, he looks like the best athlete on the court. So you know that can translate over to the football field, but he also is a natural passer. I think this guy's going to be a really good player. I really hope we're able to get him. I heard Penn State's like maybe the early favorite, but I think it's still way too early. But I really don't want to lose another recruit overall to Penn State. Aazaar Abdul-Rahim joins the Maryland staff, and it's a big deal. I'll tell you about that now. We have a new co-defensive coordinator at Maryland in Aazaar Abdul-Rahim, coming from Boston College, but he was previously, if you guys remember, he was previously in College Park from 2016 to 2018. And this is a big deal for the Maryland defense, and specifically the Maryland secondary and the cornerbacks and overall and safeties, because he does a great job with that secondary play. He developed some of the top Maryland secondary players to come out, like J.C. Jackson and Darnell Savage, 2 players in the NFL. J.C. Jackson had an awesome year with the Patriots a couple years ago, and he's back with the Patriots now after having kind of a tough stint with the Chargers. And then Darnell Savage currently plays for the Green Bay Packers, and he's been a starter for them some. So he did a great job at developing talent at Maryland overall and getting those 2 players to the NFL, but also developing other great players at the University of Maryland. And I think this is a great hire for Coach Loxley overall. He's coming from Boston College, where he's promoted to defensive coordinator overall. But he has a really good eye for talent, and he is known to be an elite recruiter. I just talked about him developing J.C. Jackson and Darnell Savage, and I think that's what excites me, because I look at the guy we just got in Jett White. I look at Braden Lee. I look at Brandon Jacobs, which I keep bringing up those kind of 3 because those are the first 3 that come to mind and our highest rated recruits in that class. And I think Aazaar will be able to do some really big time things with them overall. So I can't wait to see what they do. But we're starting to just have really good coaching staff with the secondary, and also just turning out really good players in the secondary. But he will join the staff overall, and he's an elite recruiter. And we know we got to recruit. That's the name of the day in college football, transfer portal, recruiting, guys. That's what it is today. And I think Maryland, if they want to take a next step, we have to take the next step in recruiting. We do a pretty good job in recruiting, but if we want to take the next step, we really got to enter in a kind of like, I think we got to have like the 25th-ish ranked class if we want to take the next step as a program, especially with the Big Ten and how loaded it is. I think we can do it. I really do. And I think our 2025 class is really going to be the best class yet. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. But thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.